I dedicate this to the enlightenment of all beings everywhere. What if feeling something is basically feeling the vibration of atoms, a kind of effective, abstract representation of the atoms themselves vibrating. The more detailed our awareness of our feelings, the closer we are to actually feeling the atoms themselves as they actually are vibrating. Perhaps the very dance of Shiva. This is why feeling is necessary to think well, because feeling is experiential awareness of the motions we experience in the moment. Therefore, thought by itself is often trapped in the past. Every thought contains its own feeling, but if we aren't in touch with the feelings contained in our thoughts, then we aren't fully present. Everything we see through the filter of identification is seen through a filter of thought. It may be emotional, but emotion tends to lock us into a perspective. When we're just emotional, we aren't aware of the whole underlying felt context, of which our emotions are a small part. To see the world from thought and emotion alone is to cut off from the whole of our experience of the moment. This may be why we have so many judgmental people. When you aren't fully present with the living moment, it's easier to have preconceptions. Remember, thought traps you in the past. Thought by itself. Instead of conceptions born of insight grounded in the ever-changing felt experience of the present. Judgmentalness also feels safer because it doesn't force us to confront an inner world of continual change. Think of being out in the ocean, too far out for you to swim safely, while the ocean is moving briskly. I wonder if this is what we fear when we shut ourselves off from feeling, from the deeper undercurrent and deeper backdrop of our felt experience. The ego, which we normally believe we are, is in a sense just another preconceived notion. Think of that. The idea that you, as you know yourself, are a preconceived notion. Thoughts trapped in the past. A judgment we've passed on ourselves before we even had all of the information. In this case, all of the information is to point us at the information provided by that backdrop of felt experience that allows us to connect to the whole of our being, to be a whole person. We are not as small as we think we are. But we make ourselves small. We believe ourselves to be something small. Our limitations follow suit with this preconceived notion. It contains elements that cannot be clearly articulated in words or images or emotions. Remember that every feeling, every emotion, every thought is this complex of feeling. We could call it felt energy. And even when you think you know the ways in which you've limited yourself, there's nuance to that. Nuance to that complex of limitation that you don't know if you're not feeling what that means, what those limitations mean on a felt level. At some point, those limitations, the ego, the small ego, I mean, identity is a complex and mysterious thing that I'm not going to get into here. But I think we all know what I mean more or less when I say the small ego, the limiting ego. It was once useful before we learned how to observe in a nuanced way and protected us from the existential dilemma of the vastness of being by closing us off from the whole of ourselves. Like a young child, a baby that doesn't realize when mommy leaves, she still exists. What do they call it? It escapes me right now. But we're like that. We have to confine ourselves to this small version, this small artificial thought constructed version of what we are, for fear that we will dissolve into this ocean of being and not be anymore. Being in the moment is to be in touch. Touch is feeling. So feeling brings experience to bear on thought. And feeling is often very nuanced in its awareness of experience, even if we aren't aware of that felt awareness, of that feeling awareness, of all the nuance of that feeling awareness that is always there. Our feelings catch the most amazing patterns, the most amazing details. And it's miraculous, awe-inspiring, what we would have thought we missed, but our feelings caught it. Experience is always in motion. Remember those atoms vibrating. So feeling is always an awareness of motion. This is why to understand feelings, we need awareness over a period of time. Consistent awareness. Otherwise, we have a snippet of the whole feeling because we got distracted and it didn't attend for a sufficient duration. Duration, or awareness over time, is more than it seems, because awareness over time allows us to notice how the parts of the whole come together. Otherwise, we perceive all that is as separated into parts, divided by the world of sleep and wakefulness. When we are aware for a sufficient duration, then we have an awareness of the fourth dimension, the normal 3 dimensions together with time. This is why meditation aids us in temporarily silencing thought or slowing thought. You know, it's often said that isn't the goal of meditation. Mindfulness meditation specifically is where they usually say that. And I'm not going to get into different kinds of meditation. There are kinds, though, that are about silencing thought. But even there, you don't want to cling to trying to make it happen, as then that becomes a kind of, becomes its own inner noise, I guess. So meditation can aid us in temporarily silencing thought if we're doing that type of meditation. As our normal relationship to thought blinds us from knowing the undercurrent of feeling awareness, that everything else is floating within, meditation opens us to it gradually over time. We normally see our own mind projected onto everything else, which, this is a different subject, but that can actually be useful to a degree. But it also blinds us to what is actually happening outside of ourselves, to a point anyway. So we normally see our own mind projected onto everything else. Hence part of why it's so easy to say, I am my job, I am my emotion, I am my ideas, I'm my car. That might sound weird. Who identifies as their car? Maybe some people do. But when I say some people feel I am my car, we see this in their behavior. Someone spills coffee in their car, and yeah, there's the needing to clean it and stuff like that, and that can be upsetting. But there's also often this sense that we were hurt by what happened to our things. And here we see how identification objectifies us. We become the object. We might think, I'm a parent. That's your role. It's like a outfit you wear, a uniform you put on. It's important. Not saying it's not. But you're so much more than that. You're a person, a human, a human. And behind that, there's something even more profound, and that gets forgotten. You think you are your marriage, and a multitude of other things. We rarely notice how we simply exist beneath all we conceive. We feel constant unease that's inherent to ego knot of identification. The unease feels unsteady, never at rest, and yet here lies a paradox that nothing is ever still. But what feels still is settling into what simply is in its purely undefined state. Further, our defined state, as transitory and illusory as it is more fixed than the truth. Because the truth, undefined being, outlasts our identified state, which is, never mind. Because the truth outlasts the identified state, because it is true, it is more stable, even though it's more fluid. Like the ocean, it shifts and changes, yet forever remains the ocean. Like the waves of the ocean moving in and out, we could conceptualize, for ease of visualizing, that there are two currents of awareness. The first is always and everywhere the same. We are born with it, and it appears to be unchanging. This awareness simply is, even when we aren't aware that we're aware. There are some meditations where they say, rest in awareness. The teacher Adyashanti is known for saying this, as well as others. And when they're saying rest in awareness, that's what we're resting in. That awareness that's always there. We're never not aware. That awareness remains, and the contents of our mind, like Plato's cave, are mere shadows of this awareness, or shadows floating within this awareness. The second current is evolving as we concentrate upon our experience. There's really no separation between these two awarenesses. It's more a product of our of a kind of inner optical illusion produced by our dualistic state of mind. So the second evolving awareness evolves as we concentrate on our experience. Many tools for developing self-knowledge help this second current evolve as these tools direct this awareness inward onto the contents of our mind. It may even be that the purpose of the egoic mind's perception is to evolve awareness, even if we aren't aware that that's the purpose, which is probably part of the problem. As such, the question arises that if we aren't aware of the purpose of this egoic mind, then is this purpose ours? And if it isn't, then to whom does this purpose serve? And why are we unwittingly slaves to a purpose that isn't ours? When the evolving current is turned inward toward the inherent original current, while we maintain consistent, undistracted awareness for a sufficient duration, then we come to, you could say, fold consciousness in on itself. Kind of like folding a piece of paper over so the ends touch. This is metaphorically akin to folding the fabric of space-time itself. A theoretical method, they say, for traveling faster than the speed of light. Speaking in metaphors here. Space here is symbolic of inherent awareness, the awareness that is always there, because inherent awareness can be felt as already, always in and of everything. Inherent awareness is also where we get our sympathy for anything, and it is inherently a sympathy for all experience, even towards that which we feel even towards things we don't like. It is with this deep reality of inherent awareness that we derive true, lasting happiness in its most essential form. This means underneath it all, we are always, already, believe it or not, actually happy. This is hard to convey in words. You have to experience it. It does help, though, if you think of your breathing. Think of how when you hold your breath for long enough, it's uncomfortable. And then when you start breathing again, it feels good. That good feeling that you have right after you stop holding your breath, it never goes away. It's always there. We just take it for granted. So there's always this pleasure simply from allowing ourselves to exist. Our sensory experience produces this subtle hint of pleasure and happiness. By happiness here, there are many different ways of defining happiness, and I'm not going to get into that. I digress. Time here is a metaphor for evolving consciousness, because things evolve through and with time. This is also that part of us responsible for our dislike of things. And it causes us to want to get away from, to separate, to close ourselves off, just as time creates separation. This, of course, is the cause of a lot of misery. And yet it's also, when utilized wisely, the key to our self-development. There's no development if there's no progression through time, no process. And therefore, it's the key to our eventual freedom, or a component of the process that leads to our eventual freedom. Without the sense of separation, we wouldn't point our awareness in on itself. We'd have no reason to. If we didn't point awareness in on itself, our feeling awareness, our felt energy wouldn't shift and or move towards an ever more refined awareness. Without that refining of our awareness of the world, there would be no inspiration, no realization, no depth, breadth, or height of meaning, i.e. there would be no intuitive understanding. When awareness is folded in on itself, we compress our perception of time to a singular point. This singular point becomes akin to a gravitational singularity. We could also say that it magnetizes like things to us, like experiences to us. Like we become a gravitational well or a gravitational vortex of a certain kind, of a consciousness evolving sort. And then we attract to ourselves things, energies, and so much more that's in accord with that energetic vortex we've created through the meditative process. This is to say that the gravitational force of our awareness upon itself is so intense that our space-time awareness itself breaks down catastrophically. This catastrophic breakdown dissolves the subject-object duality of our experience. We come to know the world before it was interpreted. A world beyond time. The world before it was created. This singularity, which we now exist within, is by definition not determined by where and when. Singularity is the ultimate result of being here now. Namaste.